HN and others, especially that came on to form the OPC, were so insistent, to go back to your original quote, that no, these things matter. These things happened in history, and we need to take seriously our confessional statements. And if we are ministers of the gospel and we've taken vows to these things, then that matters. It means something. And it's not just, I vow not to teach contrary to this, but in my heart, I'm going to believe whatever I will. No. This, we're taking vows that we believe these things without reservation, from the heart, that we believe and affirm that this is true, and that we are going to seek to teach and minister according to these things. We need to take that seriously. Do you find that to be, I'm not looking for specific examples unless you have any, but do you find that to be a challenge today? Certainly not maybe in the same way that that we've had, 100 years ago, but there's still always challenges on the edges, I think, for confessional integrity.
There is an anti-doctrinal strain that is in the air.
Yeah.
Not just in our churches, but in the world. And it affects our churches. So there is a sense in which you have people, even ministers of the gospel, who will sort of roll their eyes when any kind of confessional issue is raised, as if that's sort of passé. It's not the most important or central thing. And so that's certainly with us. Just to add to what you said a minute ago, it's particularly indefensible for us in our moment in time to not operate with integrity with respect to the confessions, because none of us are coerced in any fashion to affirm these things. Right. I mean, you might be able to point to a period in history in some place or other where it really was going to be detrimental for you and your family unless you sort of signed on the dotted line with your fingers crossed to some confession of faith. But that is not the age in which we live. There is not a minister in the United States who was coerced into that by the government, or who was forced to make these vows. No, these are vows that were taken with total freedom.
Yeah.
And so then to turn around and somehow look at the confessional standards as a kind of straitjacket, or something to be avoided or talked around, or again roll your eyes, is really, it really is hard to defend.
This gets at a related issue that's always perplexed me, and I just don't understand. On this point, I don't understand the progressive impulse. And here's what I mean. They're throughout American Presbyterian history, and it's not just Presbyterian, but just Christianity in America. There's always this notion from within. There are at times a progressive element, and they want to change the church into something it is not. And it's just never, given the fact that we have the freedom to take these vows or not, I just have never really understood the impulse to take these vows and then either change your mind and not agree with them anymore, or to take them, violating the 9th commandment to begin with. You don't mean it in the first place, but then to actively seek to change the church, or to do practices that are in contradiction or contrary to the standards, or your secondary standards or tertiary standards. You got things, in your book of church order that are not allowed. And it just never makes sense to me why we would start doing things, why someone would start doing things that are forbidden, thinking that if we push the envelope here, then eventually this church is going to come alongside us and change, rather than just saying, and having integrity and saying, no, we're going to leave because we don't agree with these practices, and we're going to start our own thing, or join with another group that believes these sorts of things. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's always been that way. I mean, it for some reason that seems to be the playbook. But I can't remember whether it's this way in the OPC, but in the PCA, when we take our vows, part of the whole that whole process is that we also say, if at any time my views change on these things, then it's my duty to immediately put that in writing and give it to my session, give it to the presbytery, and then they can evaluate whether this has moved outside the bounds of the the vows I've taken
Yeah.
or not. And so it's not as if anyone is saying you can never change your
Of
mind,
course. No.
because we're humans, we're sinful, we have limited scopes of ability to understand things, and so people will change. But the point is, there's a mechanism for that.
Mhm.
So at no point are you coerced
Mhm.
into remaining under a system that you no longer agree with.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and I think it's sad, but there's more integrity to say, let's say you are persuaded, and this has happened. It happened recently that a Reformed and Presbyterian minister becomes convinced of Roman Catholicism and becomes Roman Catholic. But there's still more integrity in admitting that and leaving than staying and trying to change the church to, participate in Romish practices. Another one that's gonna, I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but I mean, this is something we should talk about a little bit more forthrightly sometimes. Just the pushing of the boundaries of women's ordination. That's an example of something that uh, clearly the PCA and the OPC, of course, we don't agree with, but people that would prefer that are nevertheless pushing those boundaries from within, even though they don't agree with the rules that they've agreed to abide by. That's an example that's just always perplexed me.
Well, it's perplexing,
Yeah,
particularly because, as you mentioned earlier, there are other denominations
exactly.
that would share a lot of our convictions, but
Hmm.
not that one.
Hmm.
And so
They'd
it
love
would
to
it
have you.
would seem to be a congenial landing
Yes.
place if you were a minister and those were your convictions.
Yes, I agree.